Okay, leaving cert honours, paper 1 from the deferred papers. Isn't this the deferred papers? Yes. So, sometimes you guys will ask me, you'll say like, oh, it's hard when I look at the question to know exactly what I'm supposed to do, so how would you do it? And it's difficult for me to say because I've seen the questions that you guys do so much but at this point that I'm not seeing them for the first time. So normally what I'll do is I'll kind of go through a paper from scratch that I haven't really seen before, and I'll give you kind of like a live reaction to what I'm doing so that you can kind of see how I would approach it if I was approaching it from scratch. Just, I don't know, it might help. I will say I might make some mistakes when doing this because I'm not going to be doing the full in and out of certain things like rounding and stuff. I'm not going to be too pushed about, and graphs I'm not going to be too bothered about. So if you're going to be wanting to look for the actual answers and how to do it, don't necessarily look at this. This is more so just to kind of give you an idea of how I would approach a question if I saw it from scratch. That's all. Okay, normally it starts off at algebra. That's not too bad. That's going to be the minus b. No trickery, no shenanigans there. A is 2, B is minus 8, C is minus 11. So I'd say minus 8 plus, well, I'd say minus 8, sorry, plus minus the square root of minus 8. It's important to put those brackets on it. 4 times 2 times minus 11 all over 2 times 2. I'm going to pause it while I type that in. The button I press for pause and it causes something else to happen. But you'd get two values. You would get x is equal to, now it says to 2 decimal places, so 508. And then if you do the minus 1.08. Okay, nothing too adventurous there. I think you'd all be okay with that, so I don't need to worry too much about it. Find the range of values of p. You'll always get in leaving cert honours an inequality that either has a modulus bars or a fraction. If there's the fraction, you do the denominator squared on both sides. If it's a modulus bars, you square both sides, because then you can kind of ignore the modulus bars, pretend they're just brackets. If you do square that out, you get 4 squared plus 28. P plus 49 is greater than or equal to 9. Bring that over, make it a minus. That would be 40. Divide everything by 4. I'm skipping a couple of lines, but you'd end up with this. Yes, and then that would be p equals minus 5 and p equals minus 2, I think. Again, I'm skipping a couple of lines. You could do the minus b formula there. Now I would zone in on this. That's a quadratic. That's going to look like that. There's my x-axis. There's my minus 5 and my minus 2. And it says when is it greater than, so it's all of these points I want and all of these points. So for this one I'd have to say as long as x is less than minus 5, and over here I'd say as long as x is greater than minus 2. And because there's a little crocodile here, I'd have to, or a little line under the crocodile, I have to do it for them and them. I've done a more in-depth version of how to actually solve those on the TikTok, I think, somewhere, so you could find that. Solve the following equation for this. So before we start, I can put two logs together if they're being minus, but I can't do it if it's a 2 in front, so I'm going to make that a power on the n. So it's going to be n squared, basically. And then what I can do is I can kind of condense that into 8 minus 4n over n squared. That's if you're minusing two logs that are the same base. That's equal to 2. And then if we use the top right of page 22, that ends up being 8 minus 4n over n squared is equal to 2 to the power of 2, which is 4. And then we'd end up with 4n squared plus 4n minus 8 equals 0. Divide everything by 4, we get n squared plus n minus 2 equals 0. Then we'd get n plus 2n minus 1. So n is equal to minus 2 and n is equal to 1. But we'd have to go back and check that makes sense. The 1 is fine. Yeah, the 1 is fine. I think the minus 2 isn't. Oh yeah, well, it even tells you, even without checking. So I was subbing them in, but it even tells you n has to be greater than 0. So I'm going to assume it's n equals 1. I don't really think the purpose of what I'm doing this for really served the first question. Proof by induction. This is a very basic one. I'm surprised this actually came up. Again, the point of this was me trying to show you guys how I'd approach questions. And these ones are just kind of like, you've seen these before. There's no nonsense to them. They're just doing the question. But I suppose I'll do it like 1 or 2. So that's fine. N equals k. And then you'd have to say 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way till k this time is going to be equal to k multiplied by k plus 1 over 2. We're going to say assume that's true. Then we're going to do n equals k plus 1. I just want to point out, actually, at this point here, normally, now the marking scheme is obviously, they're capable of changing it. At this point here, you'd be on 8 out of 15 or something normally, where they give you over half the marks for just subbing in 1, showing that it works, subbing in k, saying assume this works. Sometimes it's not 1. Sometimes they'll say in the question something like, oh, n can only be greater than or equal to 3, in which case sub in 3. It's always the smallest one you can sub in. K plus 1 would mean that we'd have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus dot 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 plus k plus a new one of k plus 1. And that would be equal to k plus 1 in place of this n here. And then k plus 1 in the bracket in place of this guy here, and the plus 1 is here, all over 2. And the beauty of the series ones is that this guy is the same as this guy, so we can replace it with k bracket k plus 1 over 2 plus k plus 1. And this we can condense down ever so slightly to k plus 1, k plus 2 over 2. This would be k squared plus k over 2 plus 2k plus 2 over 2. And then if we multiply this out, we would get k squared plus 3k plus 2 over 2. But if we add these together, we would also end up with k squared plus 3k plus 2 over 2. And because the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side, we're done. Now, I'd have to write a little bit in English that says, I'm not going to write it down just because it's a pain to write on this. But basically, you would write a little thing that says, we've shown that it works for 1. And we've also shown that if it worked for k, it would work for k plus 1. Therefore, it works for every natural number. That's what you should technically write in English. Solve this. A fraction. I don't like a fraction. People don't like fractions. You get weirded out by that, but it's just a fraction. How do you get rid of a fraction? You're dividing by y. What's the opposite of dividing by y? Multiplying by y. So you just multiply everything in this equation by y. It would cancel the y in the fraction one. When you multiply by the 2y, you'd end up with 2y squared. And when you multiply by the 3, you'd get 3y. I've been talking a lot today, excuse me, I'm quite tired. So we'd say 2y squared minus 3y plus 1, just rearranging it, moving around. Oh, look, it's another minus b formula, which is like the third one in this question, which is bizarre. So we'd say it's 2y minus 1 and y minus 1. And then y is equal to, okay, I see where they're going with this. Y is equal to a half, or y is equal to 1. Now it says, hence or otherwise find the values of x for which this is true. Now you'll notice this is kind of the same, similar enough layout to that. 4 to the power minus x would be the same as 1 over 4 to the positive x. If you put it underneath a fraction, you don't need to worry about the minus on the power, and vice versa. You can swap it back and forth. But then what I can do is I can say, everywhere I see 4x, I'm going to put like, I can't think of a number that I'm not going to write down that looks like or a letter that doesn't look like a number. P, we go with P. So I'm going to say P is equal to 4 to the power of x, because then this guy would be 1 over, instead of 4 to the power of x, be 1 over P. This would be 2P. This would be 3. Don't really need to do all of this. It's just I was doing one with these the other day, and you notice then it does look like this guy. So you could do all of that again. You don't even need to do it at this point, because basically if we know that P would be the same as 4 to the power of x, you know, I should have just done this. Y is equal to 4 to the power of x, because then it looks identical to this. And I could do the minus b again, or the brackets again. I could do all of that, but I just know I'm going to get the same two answers of a half and 1. So instead I have 4 to the power of x equals a half, and 4 to the power of x equals 1. Now in that case, that is going to be x is the minus a half, and x is 0, I think. So you could use the top right of page 21 to figure that out. Again, maybe that's the point. I should have done that actually. The letter we're looking for is stuck inside of a power, so that means we have to introduce the top right of page 21, which is if you have something that looks like this, then swap it out for something that looks like this. Just identify your a, x, and y and put them into the right places, and I promise you that is what it would tell you. Yeah, I think so. I think the minus a half is right. The 0 is right. I know that much. Complex numbers. In this question, I squared is -1. They always tell you that. I disagree with it, but we'll go on with it. The complex number shown in the argon diagram below. 3 are labeled A, B, and C. Write A, B, and C in the appropriate things. So there's Z1. Immediately I know Z is going to be the conjugate. So C is there. Because if this was like 3 plus 2i, we'll say this would have to be 3 minus 2i, which is what the conjugate is. The minus version is the one that is shot out the other side of like 0, 0. So that one's going to be here, the B. Because if you multiply it by -1, we'll say you're just shooting it out the other way. And multiplying it by I is the one that gets rotated 90 degrees counterclockwise, which looks like that. So that would be A. Use the Moivre's theorem to solve this. Well, on a graph, 4i would go here. Yep. So when we're putting that in polar form, it's actually quite easy. If you remember, polar form is or bracket cos theta plus I sine theta. And then we know, now you could do all the maths and stuff, but basically we know or is going to be 4. We know theta is going to be 90. I hope this is right. I'm tired. Don't judge me too much. Because I'm not checking this. Not today. Maybe some other day. Yeah, so it's going to be 4 just because it's straight up 4. Normally we'd have to do Pythagoras, but we don't have to because there's no left or right variation based on there's no real number. Well, the real number is 0. And it's going to be 90 because it's just straight up. This is from here to here is 90 degrees. Now, it said w squared is equal to that. So we're really going to have, well, imagine it this way. Like that, if we move the squared over, that's what it turns into. So then basically this guy is going to be put to the power of a half. Now if I'm putting it to the power of a half, I have to change it slightly, where I'm going to say 4 bracket cos 90 plus 360n. There's another way of doing this as well. If you're doing this another way, don't panic too much. If you're doing it where you put it equal to the square root of a plus bi or something, I just don't like doing it that way. 90 plus 360n. You need to know this way anyway. You might as well be able to do it. That's a bracket, that's a bracket, that's a square bracket, that's a half. So power is a fraction, you have to add into 360s. Then the Moivre says that's going to be a 2 because you put that to the power of a half, which is the same as a square root. You multiply all of these by a half, so that's going to be 45 plus 180n. Same over here, plus I sine 45 plus 180n. Then we would do n equals 0 and n equals 1. You should go on and do 2 just to make sure that you don't need it, but I guarantee you we don't. And then cos of, what's cos of 45? 1 over root 2. You guys will get a slightly different answer to that if you're using your new calculators. Yeah, wait, look, my old thing, it would have been oh yeah, okay, that's going to be root 2. Again, if you want to look at this, I've done other videos explaining this actually. I shouldn't be spending so long doing this. I'm just speed running supposedly. And then n equals 1 would be slightly different. It would be, there's the minus for the cos one, which makes sense. And also for the sine one, yeah. So it would be minus I root 2. And that does make sense. They're supposed to be the opposites of each other. Yeah, look, I might get the odd thing wrong. I think that's right. I might get the odd thing wrong. I'm tired. Again, it's just really, you should be looking at this to see how I answer actual questions. But none of these are all just kind of algebra. I don't mean basic as in they're difficult to do, but there's no interpretation I don't think needed for these. This is the root. A root I can sub in and get 0. Find the other two roots. Now this is kind of gnarly, I will say that, because this is factor theorem. This is factor theorem in complex numbers. So what we could do is we could just do normal factor theorem, where if this is a root, then we know that z minus 3 plus I is a factor, and we could do long division where we divide that into this guy, and then we would get a quadratic, and we would have to do the minus b on the quadratic, which is doable. But the conjugate root theorem says that if there's no i's here, which there are not, then the conjugate of z bar, which is 3 plus I, would also be a root. So that's my second one, the one that is complex. Now it said 1 should be real, and that kind of makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say z minus 3 plus I is one factor. I'm going to say z minus 3 minus I is the other. I'm going to multiply them out. Z squared minus 3z minus iz minus 3z plus 9 plus 3i plus z iz, I'll say, minus 3i minus I squared, which, as they told us, turns into minus 1, so that would turn into a plus 1. Iz and minus iz cancels, so we'd be left with z squared, and these cancel. I knew something else cancels. Z squared minus 6z plus 9. Now we know that's one factor. Our third factor should be z plus a. Now we could write plus 0i, right? Normally we write bi. We could write 0i, but they told us the other one should be real. So, and that's always going to be true in these complex numbers ones, because the answers have to be in conjugates. So the third one has to be its own conjugate. So it's going to be z plus a. Well, I know I'm going to do 9 times a. Okay, to get 40. I must have done something wrong. I must have fucked up some numbers somewhere. Give me a second. I paused it and then immediately saw it like a fool. I forgot about this plus 1 like an absolute fool. So that's not going to be a 9, that's going to be a 10, which makes a lot more sense, because whatever I have here, I'm going to multiply by the a. So 10 by a has to give me this last number. That's why the 9 was throwing me off, because I was like, that's going to be like some weird decimal. But that means that a has to be 4. So the third one is z equals minus 4, because this would be z plus 4, and then we rearrange it again like we did with the other ones. Root 1, root 2, root 3. I think. Sure. Again, if I got it wrong, I do apologize. I can't imagine. So, no, it should be fine. I should look back over these, but again, the whole point is just for you to kind of get a feel for it. Solve this. Oh, okay. All right. This is crazy how many minus b formulas you have to do for this, because you end up with. So yeah, you see the way they have y is equal to this and y is equal to that. That means this y is equal to this y. So like, we could do like another equals that's kind of like this maybe, or I suppose an easier one might be like this. But if those y's, so if this guy is equal to this guy, and he's equal to this guy, and he's equal to this guy, then these two lads are also equal to each other. So I'm just going to put them equal to each other. So I'm going to get 3x squared minus 32x plus 54 equals 2x plus 14. Move everything to one side. Do the minus b formula. I honestly don't know why they would have done that so many times, to be honest with you. But all right, there's nothing that divides into all of this. So unless I did something else wrong, but I don't think so. 3x squared, yeah, you're minus that, so it'd be minus 34. Minus that, so it wouldn't be 54, it'd be 40. So hold on, that has to be 3x. I could just do the minus b, but I'm lazy. So that would be, yeah, 10 and 4. Okay. All right then. Okay. So that means that one of my x's would be 4 over 3. It would be 10, but for every x has to be a y here. I'm going to go to the second one because it's easier. I know I've clouded it a bit, but it was y equals 2x plus 14, but that means it's going to be 2 multiplied by 4 over 3 plus 14 for this one, which is going to be 8 over 3 and 4250 over 3, I think, for that y value. Do that in the calculator. Don't take these as the genuine answers. And then this would be y equals 2 times 10. Just sub it in the other x value instead. And that one is a lot easier to do, so let's make sure I don't fuck that one up. 32, so then my answers would be 4 over 3, 50 over 3. Very bizarre that you'd have to do so many minus b's or the things. But yeah, it can happen. There's no rule that says it can't. F over to or is a continuous function of the graph. This is local maximum point at 712. If f is injective, is it injective on the interval from 6 to 8? So what that means is on the x-axis from 6 to 8. Is it injective? No, right? Because it is a maximum. So if we did the horizontal line in between here and here, it would hit it twice if that's a maximum. Isn't that right? Oh, hint, draw a sketch of the graph. Brother, I think I did. I think I did. Is it injective? I would say no. Horizontal line test. Again, I'm not going to write it in English. Horizontal line test would fail that. That's not really one that needs interpretation either. That just needs you to know what injective is. Injective means that the horizontal line test can only hit it at most once. Surjective means it has to hit it at least once. And bijective hits it exactly once everywhere. But because it's a maximum, it has to like come up and then go back down. So a horizontal line drawn near it would hit it more than once. Cool, graphs. Now that h2 is equal to k2 and h8 is equal to k8. Alright. Use the integration by the area enclosed. Again, nothing really too interpretive that needed doing. Because hx is the top one, we would do minus a half x squared plus 4x plus 1 minus the 9 minus x1. Say dx, we'd have 8 and 2. I'm going to condense that first ever so slightly to minus a half x squared plus 5x minus 8 dx, which is going to be still 8 and 2. But that's going to be now integrating it, not differentiating. That is something you guys all get wrong, so just be careful. I skipped a step. Sorry. And then that's 8, that's a 2. And we would just sub in 8 everywhere we see an x and then draw that in the calculator. I'm not going to actually do that just because it would take me a while just to type it in. And it's not, you can do that, that's nothing crazy, but I'll write out what I'm supposed to do. So I'd have it like that and then do minus and do it again. But instead, put in a 2 everywhere there's an x. If there'd been a minus on either the 8 or the 2 that we're subbing in, you'd need to be very careful about how to do that. I'd use brackets all the time, basically, just to avoid, there's enough going on. Sometimes it might also be benefit you to do this bracket first, do this bracket second, and then just minus the 2 answers, rather than type in the whole thing, because the calculator won't have enough space on the screen, and you'll just be scrolling from left to right the whole time. Multiply and simplify this. Okay. You could do the bracket out 3 times, or you could use the binomial thing on page 20 of your log tables. I would say that's x cubed. Now it's going to be minus 3x squared plus 3x minus 1. Is that it? I've skipped a few steps, but if you do use the binomial expansion, that's what it is, I think. The minus is a bit tricky. The yeah, the binomial, so you'd say x is the x, y is the minus 1. You're squaring the minus 1 in the third one, but not the other 2. Yeah, I think that's chill. I think that's okay. But I don't think you need my help with to interpret what that is. You can do that yourself. A cubic function is the following thing: find the coordinates, local maximum, local min. Differentiate it, put it equal to 0. Another minus b. My goodness. 3x squared minus 12x minus 15. We'd put that equal to 0, so we can, once it's equal to 0, we can do this. I saw someone trying to do this the other day where they didn't have it equal to 0. You can't do it if it's not equal to 0, where we divide everything. You just have to do the minus b with the top one, which is fine. But then on this bottom one, we would have x is equal to 5 and minus 1. Let me just make sure that is true, because I'm skipping a step and I could be getting it wrong. I think that's fine. But then to get the y values, holy shit, you're going to have to sub them both back into x in the original one. Ugh. I'll just do it roughly. 125 minus 150 is minus 25. Minus 175 is minus 100 plus 10. So that should be like y is equal to minus 90 or something, like a mad minus number. But if you sub in minus 1, that would be minus 1, minus 6 is minus 7, plus 15 is plus 8. That should be 18, I think. The y value for the second one is, I think. Again, please do that yourself. I just couldn't be arsed. Now, so these two go together as an x and a y, and these two go together as an x and a y. The minus 90 is obviously the lower y value, so it's going to be the minimum one. And then the positive y value is going to be the maximum, the higher number. They could both be positive, but the higher one. So again, nothing really too interpretive needed. F is the following thing. Find the values of x for which f dash x equals 0. We're going to differentiate it. F dash 0 would be, well, f dash x, sorry, is going to be 2. The 5 would go away. I'm going to treat that as a chain rule, just so I don't have to do the quotient rule. So that would be 2x minus 1 to the power minus 1, which we would change to minus 1 to x minus 1 minus 2 multiplied by 2. So that would be minus 2. So then that would turn to minus 2 over 2x minus 1 squared. We want that equal to 0, so you'd whip the 2 over, make it a minus, cancel out the minuses. You bring that up, you'd multiply it, so it would be 2 is equal to 8x squared minus 8x plus 2. Yeah, you bring the 2 over, cancel it out, right? You get this. Technically, you could do another minus b with this, which is funny in my mind. But you could group instead. That's another thing you could do. Take out an 8x from both. We'd be left with x minus 1 equals 0. And then either x is equal to 0, well, 8x equals to 0, and then x equal to 0. Or x minus 1 equals to 0, or x equals 1. Would that make sense if I put that in? That would be 2 minus 1, which is 1, which squared is 1, which would be 2, which is true. If I put in 0, that would be 2 over 1. Yeah, that's, yeah, hunky-dory. Again, it just kind of says, I kind of was hoping that I'd be able to look at this and be like, oh, what they're asking is this, and this is how I would do it, and just keep out for this trick. Keep an eye out for this trick. Population of a region is now 6.7 million. Population is growing at a rate of 10% per year. At this growth rate, the population will be greater than 20 million for the first time n years from now. So if it's increasing by 10% a year, if you think about it in financial maths, we would use this formula, and there's nothing wrong with using this formula here. Like, there's no rule that says it has to be money. So that's what we would do. P is the starting amount, so I would say the 6.7 million, which if you want to write as actual numbers would look like this, because there has to be 6 numbers after the 6 for million. I can't imagine they did the 6-7 on purpose actually that long ago, did they? They can't have. The population is going to rate at 10%, so we would say 1 plus, now don't forget, instead of 10 we'd write 0.1. And then T is N, we don't know what that is, but they said greater than 20 million, so I'm going to put it equal to 20 million, which isn't exactly what they want, but if I find out when it hits 20 million, I'll just go to the next one, the next year. So I would divide both sides by 6,700,000, and I end up with 1 plus, well, I'm just going to say 1 point, Christ. I'm just going to say 1.1 just to save me time. 1.1 to the power of n is equal to, if you divide that by 6.7 thousand, you will end up, or 6.7 million, sorry, you'll end up with 200 over 67. And then we would use the top right of page 21 again, the ax equals y, and then you would use the log base a y equals x version, so you'd end up with log 1.1 200 over 67 equals n. If I type that in, sorry, I'm aware my calculator is right next to the microphone, so it would come across super loud, but what are you going to do? And then I end up getting 11.47 equals n, but that means if it hits 20 million at 11.47 years, that means it will go above 20 million at 12 years, definitely. It'll go above 20 before then, but they want the actual value of n. You don't want to really say at 11 and a half years, so that's what we would do. Oi. f is the Fulham function where this is in radians, fx is equal to this. Use the product rule to find the value of this. It's so weird they kind of tell you to use the product rule, but all right. I would say that's u, that's v. I guess it's because there's technically another way of doing it, and they want you to check, or they want to check that you can still do this shit. So I would say du dx equals sine turns to cos, but because it's 3x, we'd have to say 3 cos 3x, and then v is equal to cos x, and that turns into dv dx, which I think is minus sine. I'm going to have to check that now for a split second. Yeah, cos turns to minus sine, and then, yeah, sine turns to cos when you're differentiating. Yes, 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 yes. Product rule is u by dv dx, and then v by du dx. So I would just do, it's going to be minus sine 3x sine x. We can't put them together because they're two different terms inside of their respective signs. That's going to be 3 cos 3x. That's going to be cos x. Now all you would do is everywhere you see an x, now don't forget to sub in pi over 4. A lot of people would forget that. They would get down to here and be so chuffed with themselves with the product rule, they would forget that it needs to be like minus sine 3 pi over 4. You might need to write it like that in the calculator. Make sure you kind of ensconce the brackets like that so it's not going to, I don't know if that's the right word, but if you nest them so that it looks like that, right? And do it for the other ones as well. I just couldn't be arsed. Make sure your calculator's in radians. I don't think you need my help with that, right? Yeah. Yeah, no. I should be able to do that. I'm just tired. Because they're all going to end up being 225 or 45. So that would be sine, no, 135. 135, I misspoke, not 225, 135. Sine, so that would be minus 1 over root 2 multiplied by 1 over root 2. This might be wrong, I'm just kind of enjoying myself, leave me alone. Plus 3 times cos would be minus 1 over root 2. And your calculator will say something different. Your calculator will say root 2 over 2. Cos pi over 4 would be 1 over root 2. That would be minus 3 over 2. That would be minus 1 over 2. So minus 2, maybe? I don't know. As I said, do that bit yourself. I just wanted to see if I could do that for the crack, for my own enjoyment. Now we're getting into trickier stuff. The continuous graph is defined in between minus 10 and 50. Alright, it's shown. It has 3 turning points, 2 local maxes, 2 local mins, 1 local max. This is a very unusual one to give in leaving cert because this is a quartic with 3 turning points, which is very rare. Use the information in the graph to answer the following questions. K is a constant. The horizontal line y equals k does not cut the graph. Y equals, write down one possible value of k. Well, we could have it down here, or we could have it up here. So as long as k is smaller than minus 3, so let's say, oh my god, let's say k is equal to minus 5, let's say. Or what we could also have done is k is bigger than 12, because k would have to be at a y value that's above the 12. Anywhere in between minus 3 and 12, you draw a horizontal line across here and hit it at least once. So yeah, I wrote down 2, so I don't know if I lose marks for that. P is a constant horizontal line, cuts it at exactly 2 points. Oh, okay. So write down 2, write down the ranges of possible values of P. Oh, okay. Now, it's range, so there's multiple, and it says ranges, so there's actually 2 ranges, because anywhere in between minus 3, which is here, and 7, which is here, if I choose any y value in between minus 3 and 7, I would hit it twice. So I would say P could be in between minus 3 and 7, like so. Yeah, okay. But it could also bizarrely be in between 11 and 12, because if we go across like this, you'll notice that it would hit it exactly twice as well. So it's basically just this isn't, don't do here, because that would hit it 3 times. So we'd have to do another one where we'd say P is in between 11 and 12. I think that's chill. Yeah, I think that's chill. Didn't need the X values at all. That's very annoying that they've deliberately kind of hit you with the X values as crazy numbers and just they're trying hardest. I like it. I just find it amusing. Now, here we go. Air pressure is the pressure caused by the weight of air pressing down on the earth. Alright. Air pressure decreases at a height above sea level as the height above sea level increases. Of course, air pressure can be estimated using this, where K is this. Holy shit. A is a constant, so once we figure it out, that means we'll be able to keep it as just whatever we figure it out to be. And H is the height in meters above sea level. So that's a variable, so that will keep changing. So it's at different heights, that's going to be different values. Use the formula to answer A to D. The air pressure of the sea at sea level when H is 0. So I kind of have to mention that because I don't think people would know that. No, you would, because it says H is the height in meters above sea level. So yeah, okay, they didn't even need to tell you that H equals 0 bit. Hopefully you'd have spotted that, because in some leaving certs they just wouldn't mention that. At sea level, what is the height above sea level? Well, at sea level it's 0, so it's 101.3. They're saying show this, that A is this based on that. Very often people try to use this 101.3 straight away. I wouldn't advise it. What I would do is I would just sub in 0 everywhere, just H like they told me to. And hopefully I'll end up with that as my answer, but we'll see. So we'll have K multiplied by 0. Now K is this horrendous nonsense, but I don't need to write it in because I'm just going to put it to the, I'm going to multiply it by 0. So regardless of what it is, it's just going to end up being 0. And anything to the power of 0 is 1. So that's just A. But they told me that if I subbed in 0, I'd get 101.3 as an answer. So then I have equals 101.3 the whole way down, basically. And yeah, A does end up equaling 101.3, like they asked. Yep. Find the air pressure at the top of Mount Everest, which is 8,849 meters above sea level. Yes, you want to make sure that when they do this, it is in meters and not kilometers, because if it was kilometers, we'd have to change that to 8.849. But, you know, just to play it safe. So, all that is just subbing in. I don't know if I'm even going to do that, but basically we would just say the 8849 equals, now instead of A I can use 101.3. That's a common enough thing. As we said, it's a constant. That's kind of important. That's the kind of thing I wanted to hit you with. Constant, you would just put it in. Now we're going to use 101.3 for A evermore. Even if you couldn't remember how to do the first one, that's why they tell you it here, so that you could still continue it all the way down. It would be e to the power of k, which I'm still not writing. If I was putting it in my calculator, that's one thing, but I'm not writing it down. But you would put that in your calculator with this in instead of k. Just be careful with that. You need to make sure the whole bit here would end up in the power. Sometimes if you're using the calculator, there's some shenanigans that will go on. You need to make sure the 8849 doesn't end up underneath the fraction or out of the power of the e if you're doing that. I just don't think I need to do it. Altitude sickness is caused by low air pressure. Some people start to feel sick when air pressure is at 80 units. At what height above sea level would these people start to feel sick? Gross, right? So they're asking us what would H have to be. So it would be 101.3 e to the power of k, which if I remember was ln of 0.88 over 1,000. That's all still in the power, right? And then I'd multiply it by h, because we don't know what h is in this scenario. Did I get it right? And then 0.88. Yep. So, sorry. So, and they said when it's at 80, so I'll put it equal to 80. Then we would divide both sides by 101.3. So we'd end up with, I'm not writing that all out again if that's okay with you guys. 101.3. It doesn't matter if it's not all right with you guys. You're not here. Now, some people would do the ln of both sides, but again, I would use the a to the power of x equals y log base a of y equals x, where a is e, x is the power, the whole thing of it with the h as well, and then this fraction is the y. So I'd end up with log e. There's probably some shenanigans in there, but I don't want to, we're not going to do them. Be like this. equals ln 0.88 over 1000 h, and then I would divide both sides by ln of 0.88 over 1000. And I could type that in my calculator. The reason why, sorry, just because that would cancel. But I could type that in my calculator, but I'm not going to, if that's okay with you guys. You guys can just do it yourself. Hopefully that's okay. Correct the nearest meter, just make sure you round it. Yeah, again, there's not much I really need to say to explain it. Here they gave you the height, you subbed it in for h. Here they asked you what would the height have to be to get 80 as an answer. So obviously we'd have an answer here. They're saying what would you have to do to get an answer of 80 instead. So I put it equal to 80 and went, oh shit, now it's just algebra. We need to get h on its own. H is stuck inside of a power. That means I'm going to go to the top right of page 21. If you're ever looking for a letter that's stuck inside of a power, you're going to go top right of page 21. A ball B is at sea level, and then I divided, sorry to elaborate, because the fraction here is being multiplied by the h, right? So a ball B is at sea level, so h equals 0. A second ball C is at a height above sea level at h, where h is greater than 0. Each ball is raised 40 meters, so that the air pressure on each decreases. Which ball, if any, will have a greater decrease in air pressure? Goodness me. So, my guess would be B. I don't know why. That just is what my brain would be telling me. I guess what you could do is, so imagine you have the two balls. One is at 0, so it's like on the sea, and one is somewhere else. Let's say it's 10 meters up. So what you could do is figure out, well, we know what it is when we sub in 0. Actually, never mind. When we sub in 0, we get 101.3. So this guy here is getting a pressure of 101.3. Now, maybe I shouldn't use 10. I should use 8,849, because we already know the answer. Well, we don't. I didn't do it. Never mind. So what I would do is I'd do it again for 10. I'd sub in 10 for h and figure out what the answer is. And then I'd add 40 to both of them. So now this one is at a height of 40 meters up. And then this one is at a height of 50 meters up. I just put in 40 and 50 and just see which one is as a greater change when it goes from its original to its new position. See which one goes to a greater decrease. Don't compare these two. It's compare them to their original position and see which one has a greater decrease. There's a way of doing it by differentiating it, but differentiating that actually wouldn't be too bad at all, because it's a rule in the log tables. So now I feel obliged to show you what I'm talking about. So the thing was 101.3 e to the ln 0.88 over 1,000 h. That 1,000, by the way, is not in the ln. You just want to watch out you don't fall for that. But if I want to differentiate that, that is technically going to follow this rule, because a is the whole fraction, which is just a constant. X is the h, but the a is just the fraction. So it ends up just being 101.3 multiplied by ln of 0.88 thousand e the ln of 0.88 over 1,000 h. And then if you put in 0 for that, all of this part would disappear, because it would be the power of 0, and then anything to the power of 0 is 1, so you just have that number. So that would be the change it's going through if it's moving at, like if it's at 0 meters, if it's moving through 0 meters above it. And then you pick another number like 10 and just see, yeah, you could do it that way. I still like my other way better because it's simpler. There's more numbers probably and more times you have to do it, but it's simpler. My guess would be B, but I don't know. I guess I would have to just follow this. I just do not want to have to do it 3 more times, if that's okay. But that is what I would do. Find out what it is at 0 and 40, find the difference. Find out what it is at 10, let's say, and 50, find the difference. You don't have to pick 10, you could pick 100 to make it more obvious, 1,000 to make it more clear, and then go up to 1,050. But yeah, that's what I would advise. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe it is C. Maybe it is C. Yeah, okay. Maybe it is C. I take back the... I don't know. I'd have to do it out, as I said. I just don't want to. Thanks. John is researching the connection between air pressure and the height above sea level. On a website, he finds a different formula to estimate air pressure. Okay. All right, then. Where H is greater than 0 and height above sea meter. Use this formula to answer the next few parts. All right, find the air pressure when it is 8,849. I'm not going to do that. It's literally just subbing in the 8849 in for H, but it's a different formula. You guys have calculators. You can literally just type all of that in. I don't need to. I don't think do that. Work out the value for which is 80. So again, we put that equal to 80. And that one would be technically easier to do because if we put it all in equal to 80, the letter we're looking for is not stuck inside of a power, so we do not need to introduce logs. The letter we're looking for here is just simply being multiplied by stuff. Now, there's a lot of stuff, but we'll be all right. So what we would do is divide both sides by the 101.325 number, because then it would cancel out here. Here we'd have 101 on the bottom, 0.325. Then the next thing we have to get rid of is the power. If you bring the power over here, it would become 1 over 5.2558, but it has to be in the whole fraction, not just the 80. And then the H we want to get on its own is still being multiplied by... Oh, I lied. I'm so sorry. It's the 1 at the start we need to move, so we're going to move that over and make it a minus on the other side. Now, people will get confused and think we have to take it away, but it's not, or we have to add it on the other side, but it's not -1, it's a +1. So we move it, it would become a -1, so we'd have this at the end of that. So that's him gone now as well. And then this 2.2557 by 10 to the power of 5, -5, sorry, is being multiplied. So when we move it to the other side, it becomes dividing. Like so. Now you just type all that into the calculator and that would eventually tell you what H is, because now all of that is gone. And we're just left with H equals all of this shit. You can do that step by step. You don't need to just do it all at once. I know sometimes you guys would like to condense it down to a number before you move on to the next step and move something else. I understand that. By all means, do it that way. I was just, again, being lazy. I don't want to write it all in. John, without a H, has decided to put money into a pension fund for the next 25 years. He puts in $285 into his pension fund at the start of every month for 300 months at an interest rate of 0.35%. Per month, write the total amount of money in his pension fund at the end of the 25 years as a sum of a series. Include the first 2 and last 2 terms of a series. Oh, okay, they didn't want it to actually be done. I misread that. So, the first €285 he puts in will have 300 months worth of interest. So I'm going to say 1 plus 0.0035. Watch out for that. That's how they'll get you. To the power of 300. Plus 285 multiplied by 1 plus 0.0035 to the power of 299, because it's one less month. Let's say plus ... 285 1 point. I'm going to skip adding that if that's alright, so there's less writing, and that would be the power of 2 because there's only 2 months left, and then at the very last one there'll only be 1 month left, so it'll just be 1.0035. Find the total amount of money in the pension fund at the end of the 25 years. This is very similar to one of the mock exams, bizarrely. Yeah, but in the mock they didn't tell you it was 300. You had to cop that yourself by multiplying the 25 by 12. This was 700. Oh, and they didn't tell you what this was. They told you what the annual version was, and part A was changed that into the monthly version. So this is a nicer, this would be nicer now if this is what you got. Not how it's going to go necessarily, but find the total amount. So we need to do every single one of these things, add them together. I would say A is equal to 285 multiplied by 1.0035. I would say OR, we always pick the last one just because the power is the smallest. I'd say OR is 1.0035, and I'd say N is 300, and I would use the SN formula on page 22 of your log tables, which looks like this. Like so. Just fill in all of those things in here, throw it in your calculator. Nearest cent means round to 2 decimal places. I'm not going to do it though. Okay, I like what they did here. I'm assuming they did this. They said at the end of 25 years he added extra money until, so his lump sum was this. I think that's a way of them saying that basically if you fuck this one up, you could still do part B, which is pretty good actually. That's quite a good twist to it. Okay, So at this point, he retires and stops paying money into his pension fund. Instead, he's going to take out €1 per month at the end of each month for the next 20 years. Assuming that the interest rate remains at this, work out the maximum value that A can be. Yeah. Now, they didn't specify here. Like they said at the end of each month. They didn't specify whether he's taking money out on the day that he retires. It could be seen as ambiguous, I would argue, but based on the blunt wording of it where they say the end of each month, I'm going to assume he's not taking money out the day he retires. He's going to wait till the end of month 1 before he takes it out. That might be wrong of me to guess that, but I do think it is... Yeah, okay, I think that's what they meant, though, because he wouldn't put in money on the day he retires if he was going to take money back out, I suppose. So that means that his first payment that he takes out will have built up 1 month's worth, 1 month's worth of interest. So we're going to undo that 1 month's worth of interest by dividing by that. And then his second one, we'd undo 2 months worth of interest. So we just do that. And then we'd have like so. We have 1.0035 to the power of, so what is it, 20 years? So here they didn't tell you, right? 20 by 12 is 240, so it'll just be 239. And then his very last payment, we'd have to undo 240 months worth of interest to find out how much he needs now for it. And all of that should be equal to, if we add it all together, to 165,646.2. Now what we would do again is we make another sequences and series where we say A is the first one. That's a point, don't judge me. That's not a point, don't judge me. It would be that. Or is, you're not going to be happy about this, 1 over 1.0035. And then N would be 240. And again, you'd still use that formula like so, but there's a twist to it. I forgot, I didn't give myself a lot of room here. That's an N, 1 minus R. Thing is, this guy over here is the SN. So it would end up being 165,646.20 equals to A would be that fraction, 1.0035. 1 minus this guy. That was a mistake. That's not supposed to be a 0. That's supposed to be a 1. Now this guy is going to be to the power of N, which is 240, yeah, 240, yep. And then that's all over 1 minus 1 over 1.0035. Now, that is just algebra again. What I like to do is put that in the calculator and get a number, put that in the calculator, get a number, because then we'll have this fraction, a single number, and a single number. Instead of dividing by that number, bring it up and multiply over here. Instead of multiplying by this number, bring it down here and divide. And then instead of dividing by this number, bring it over and make it a multiply. So you're going to do multiply, divide, multiply in that order, and that will give you the answer. I just don't want to type it all in. But that would be the amount of money. That would tell you what A is. It would tell you the amount of money that he could take out every month before he runs out of money, you know. Now, the issue, after 20 years, the issue is, again, that's a complicated question, but I don't need to explain it, I don't think, because it's very simply, he's putting money in, it earns money for this many months. How much will it be? He has this much money, he's taking money out, how much will it be? There's no subtlety to it, there's no weirdness to it. The only bit is where he adds the money in, but that's to your benefit. That actually helps you with that. That is actually quite a good touch. I do like that. Because a lot of people might, I don't know how, there might be another way of wording it where it doesn't get fucked up, but I do like that. Before he retired, John worked for a company making 2 types of speed camera, X and Y. In 2020, company made X cameras of type X and Y cameras of type Y. 2020, 40% of the cameras the company made were type X. Use this to write Y in terms of X. All right. So, what we would say is we'd say X is equal to 40%. But that means Y is equal to 60%. Assuming they only make 2 cameras. I suppose that's an ambiguity that they didn't really kind of take into account. But like, there's no other way they meant it. But there's always some arsehole who would say technically. I know I'm the arsehole in this case, but that that's true. So 40% were X, 60% were y. So that means y would be equal to, so 60 is 3 halves, like 3 over 2 of 40. How do I describe that to you? If you do 3 over 2 multiplied by 40, you would get 60, right? So 60 is the same as 3 halves of 40, but then 40% is what x is, so just be 3 half of what x is. I guess you could do ratios if you prefer that way, 40 to 60, and that would be x and y. And we divide both sides by 20, and it would be 2 to 3. So what you can say is 2. No, that would be the other way around, though. Yeah, you'd have to say 3x is equal to 2y. That might confuse people more, right? You'd have to say 3x is equal to 2y there, and then maneuver it around. The best way I can spot this is that 60% is 40% and a half of 40%. So I said 1.5, but I said 3 over 2. I don't know. There's no, like, I'm not, on the top of my head, I'm not really just going up with, I'm not really coming up with anything other than just y is, x is 2/3 of y, I guess you could say it that way, and then in the reverse, y is 3 halves of x. You could do it that way, maybe. That's unusual. So in 2021, the company increased the total number of cameras it made by Type X cameras it made by 1,500 and increased the total number of Y cameras by 900. As a result, it was 50-50. Work out the total number of cameras the company made in 2021. Okay. All right. So I'm going to say when we had the original X cameras and they added 1,500 to it, it worked out to be the same as the original Y cameras plus 900. Up here, we said the original X and Y look like this. The Y can be replaced with 3 over 2X. Okay. Now, I'll be totally honest with you. I'm a maths guy, but like I literally just wrote out this first one because it made sense to me that they said that it was 50-50. So I said the original amount of X cameras plus 1,500 and the original amount of Y cameras plus 900 would end up being equal. And then I just kind of was like, where does it go from here? And then I was like, oh shit, yeah, the Y we can replace with 3 over 2X. I knew if they were going to mention something like this up here, it's a very rare thing they'd ask you to do that and not reference it in the next question. So that's 3 over 2x. Now I bring this over here, make it a minus, bring this over here, make it a minus. It would be a half x equals... Now that's not right, because that would get you a minus. Oh no, it wouldn't. I'm being stupid. I'm being so stupid. It would be minus a half equals minus 600, which means x is equal to 1,200. So originally there was 1,200 x cameras. Now we can figure out what the y is, because y is equal to 3 over 2 multiplied by that, as we figured out in the previous question, which means it's equal to 1,800. Now, what that would mean is that there's the x, there's the y, 2020, we just found out now, it was 1,200 and 1,800, which fits the 2 to 3 kind of situation, the 40%, 60%. Then in 2021, there was the original 12,000 plus 1,500. So that's 27. And then the 1,800 had an extra 900 added on, which is also 27, which is grand because it's 50-50 like they said. Total amount 5,400. Okay. And that's what the question actually asks. You want to watch out for that, because it says work out the total number of cameras made in 2021. It's not... In a question like that, I feel like you can get very bogged down as to what you're finding. Actually kind of make sure you know what they're actually asking. The total number of cameras in 2021 was all the X and all the Y added together. So you just want to watch out for that. According to a Type X speed camera, the car is travelling at 112 kilometers an hour. The company claims that their top Type X speed camera can measure speed with a maximum error of 3.5%. Use this to work out the maximum actual speed of the car. I don't know if is that I might be no I'm tired, right? So I might be I think that I don't know if there's something worded wrong there. So according to the camera it's traveling at 112, but they said the camera can be wrong by a maximum of 3.5. Use this to work out the maximum actual speed of the car. But we don't I mean my argument would be just to say we don't know for a fact that the camera has hit the maximum error of 3.5%, I guess, technically. I suppose that's what they want us to assume, right? So I'll go with that. Now, so the camera has hit a maximum error of 3.5%. It measures speed with a maximum error, but we don't know if the error is going up or down. So 112 could be the camera saying it wrong. Could be the camera saying it wrong as it's saying too fast or too slow. And it could be 3.5%, as I said, in both directions, but it could be less technically. But we're going to assume it's exactly 3.5. I genuinely don't know if that's a mistake or not a mistake, or just it's not fully clear. And again, I've had a long day, so I could just be fucking it up. Okay, all right. Let's assume to be able to do this question, I might be mixing it up. Let's assume the car is going at a certain speed. Like it started at 0 and built up to a speed of, they've used X. So I'll say the speed that he's going is A, but then the camera, because it can add on an extra 3.5%, we'll say, counted it as 112. So his speed, I'm going to assume that they intended to say that the camera is overshooting the actual speed by 3.5%. I'm assuming that's what they meant to say. So I would say that the A is at 100%, and then 112 is at 103.5%. Like it's slightly overshooting it and saying 112. I could be wrong. Oh, I suppose. Okay, sorry. No, it says the maximum actual speed. Okay, so it's the other way around then. Sorry. Okay, that they did word it better. I was just too tired to see it. It's the other way around. So what they're saying is it could go up or down. But what's the maximum that it could actually be? So yeah, okay. So what they're saying is the camera's saying 112, and it could be that it overshot it by 3.5, so the real speed is actually here. But it could be that it undershot it by 3.5, so the real speed is actually out here. Now I would still say that the maximum error of 3.5, they should have just said with an error that the error is 3.5. No, it's fine. It's completely fine. It was just purely me being stupid. That's purely me being stupid. Maximum error of 3.5. So what's the biggest stretch up it could possibly be making a mistake on? Yeah, so it's saying 112, and it could be anywhere. It could be going back 3.5, it could be going back 3, it could be staying where it is, it could be going up 2.7, it could be going up 3.5. So the maximum, yeah, okay. So we know if it's 112, it's going to be in between here and here. To find the actual speed, and I said the maximum one, so we're going to look for this one. That's the maximum one. My apologies, I was being stupid there for a moment. Everything they did was perfect. I think I was shitting the bed, something fierce. So if that's the actual speed, so that would be, let's say that is the maximum speed and it's 100%, then the camera's making an error of 3.5. So this thing here must actually be 96.5, sorry, 96.5%, because it's down 3.5%. This isn't a very good one for me. The whole point of this was me to explain questions, and I just screwed it. But I guess, it might be good for you guys to see me struggling with stuff initially too. It might make you not feel as bad. Sometimes you guys struggle with stuff, and I'm trying to tell you, it's not the end of the world. I know I'm a maths guy and I can look through it, but I mean, like, just try stuff. No one's expecting you to fully get some of these questions. Like, this is crazy. Like, they wouldn't expect people in the Leaving Cert necessarily. Like, not everybody's going to get this. It's fine. Stick to the stuff that you know. You'll be fine. I wouldn't stress. But if that's the actual speed and they're down by 3.5%, that would apply to 112 is 96.5. I think I might still be making an error there. That's just the only thing that's throwing me. 112 would be 96.5% of the total speed if it was getting it wrong by 3.5. And the actual speed is going to be bigger than 112. So, like, if I wanted to find out what the slowest speed it could go is, that 112 would be the 103.5, like I was doing up here. I was doing that backwards. So here I would divide both sides by 96.5. I'll just tell you what I would do. And then multiply both sides by 100. I'm not going to type that out if that's okay, but that is what 100% should equal, which should be the speed, the maximum speed the car can go, or the car can go at. Yeah, I'm going to take a break here to go. Yeah. All right, back. I had a break. I was just too tired last night, and I was, yeah, generally, I know the whole point of this was for you guys to see what it's like for me to see a question for the first time from scratch, but I just was in a bit of a bad mood, and I kind of do the maths to make, sometimes when I'm in a bad mood, it just cheers me up a bit. So that's probably why that last question, if I remember, I was having a torrid time with it. I was too tired. I've had a long day. It did, but again, as I said, it's probably for the best that you guys can see that does happen. Like, it's not like as soon as you can do maths, you can do all of it instantly. But what is this? The net of a closed cylinder with a radius x and a height h is cut out from a rectangular sheet of tin. Alright, the width of the sheet is 20. The diagram below shows a sheet of tin as well as a net of cylinder cut from this sheet, the shaded region. The net is made up of a rectangle with a width of h, which is the height of the cylinder. Yep, and two circles, each with radius x. Each circle has two tangents in the diagram. Yeah, okay. Alright. Uses information to write h in terms of x. It's the full thing, so I would say 20, but if we cut out 4 x's, one here, one here, one here, and one here. Those are all x, because x is the radius of the circle. Show that the volume of a cylinder can be written as this. So the volume of a cylinder formula is 1 over... no, it's not. It's the cone. Pi r squared h, right, for a cylinder. Now, we know the radius is x. We know the radius is x, so that we can just put that in for r, that's fine. And we know the h, instead of the h, we can put 20 minus 4x, so we just multiply that out, and we would get 20 pi 8, or x squared, minus 4 pi x cubed, which is what they wanted. That's fine. I'm assuming we're going maximum. Yeah, use differentiation to find the maximum volume that such a cylinder can have. So you notice they said, remember that blank in the leaving cert, instead of you having to flick back a page, they will very often give you the information from the previous page, so you don't have to keep flicking back and forth. I think that's something they do that's quite nice. Give them some credit. Maximum though means differentiate, so we need to find v dash x or dv dx, whichever way around you want to write it. The pi we're not going to worry about, we're only differentiating the x part. The pi is just like any old number, so we literally just kind of ignore it. He's just along for the ride. That's that's the derivative. To find the max or min though, you put it equal to 0. Now I'm going to factorize. I know people wouldn't like to do this. You could technically do the minus b, bizarrely. If you did a was minus 12 pi, if you did b was 40 pi, and if you did c was 0. You could do the minus b that way. Have a look at that and just see if you know where I got all that from. But I'm just going to factorize it if that's okay with everybody. What am I going to take out though? I'm going to take out a 4 pi x from both of them. So then this would just be left with 10 minus 3x equals 0, which means x is 0 or x is 10 over 3. Now obviously x being 0 is probably going to be the minimum one, right? So that would, if I put that into my volume formula, that would give me a volume of 0. If I put 10 over 3 in, correct, near a centimeter, okay, or centimeter cubed. All right, so they knew this was going to be a decimal. That's fine. I was afraid I'd fucked it up because I was getting the weird numbers, but no, that's okay. and we do that, and that would give us the maximum volume. A big issue is people will sometimes stop here, but that's just the X value you'd need to sub in. That would give you the maximum volume. So that's what you do. Just draw it on your calculator. That should be fine. I don't think I fucked up anything. Maybe when I factorized, but that's the general idea. The graph on the right shows Vx for a range of values of x. The x-axis is shown, but the y-axis is not. Alright. The graph cuts the x-axis at these points. Referring to the diagram on the previous page, or otherwise find the value of a or the value of b. I just did not read that for some reason. The graph of the volume, yeah, grand. The x-axis is shown, but the y-axis is not. So well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the y-axis is going through here basically, because I think we just found out that the volume would be 0. So this is a graph for the volume, so the height on the y-axis should be the volume. And we found out the volume would be at a height of 0 when x is at 0. So I think that's just 0, 0 instead of the a. And then b would just be when else is it equal to 0. So all we would have to do, now it says by referring to the diagram on the previous, oh yeah. Okay. So when else would the volume be 0? The volume would be 0 if you think about it, if they cut out so much from here and so much from here, that the rectangle in the middle wouldn't exist. It would just be a straight line. All of this just got smushed down to a straight line, and then you can't have a volume because it doesn't exist. As in, like, h would be 0, but h would be 0 when x is 5. Because you notice we would say if that's 5 and that's 5, that's 5 and that's 5, then that would be 20, which would cancel out the whole of the height, which means that the height would be 0. So I think it's 5 for the b. But the maths way, let's say you didn't know how to do that, what you could have also done is put the volume formula equal to 0, basically, because they said this is a graph for volume. It's cutting the x-axis here and here. That means that the volume is 0 here and here. So we take this, put it equal to 0. So if we did that, this is just another way of doing it. This is alternative. And I'm kind of just checking to see if I'm right, because I think I'm right, but I'm not really feeling it right now. Factorize again, just same again. If we put that equal to 0, we could do like factor theorem nonsense, but obviously no one would want to do that. So we're going to factorize. We're going to take a 4 pi x squared from everywhere, and that would be 5 minus x equals 0. Yeah, and that would give us x is equal to 0 or x is equal to 5. Okay, chill. So you could have used maths like I just did here, or you could have used the diagram beforehand. And the diagram is just that, obviously if you make x too big, you'll run out of metal or whatever it was. Volume for a different container can be calculated using this formula, where h is the height of the liquid in the container in meters and v is measured in meters cubed. Find the height of the liquid of the container when the volume of the liquid is 203.285 meters cubed. All right. That's just intense algebra, no? So basically, if they told us what the volume was, we're just going to put it equal to that, because this is the formula for volume, and they told us what the volume is, so clearly they subbed in a number for h, and they got this as an answer. So we bring this over, make it a plus 6, so then he's gone. Now, if we bring the 3 over 2 across, what's going to end up happening is, I'm just going to get rid of that arrow. If we bring the 3 over 2 across, it becomes the power of 2 over 3. So that's that gone. Then we would take away 4, and then that's that gone. And then we would divide by 5. So that's that gone. And then we would get the square root of all of that. And then that would be the squared gone. And h would be equal to that. And you could just put that in your calculator and find out what it is to one decimal place. You don't have to do it like I did. Do it step by step. But I don't think there's anything I'm missing there. I think that's just simply find the height. So find the h. They told us the volume would be this. This is the formula for the volume, so you slap it equals to 203. Yeah, just do your algebra. I guess the 3 over 2 might have caused a bit of an issue for people. And instead of bringing the squared over, making it a square root, you could have made it the power of a half if you'd chosen. Liquid is leaking from the container. At a certain time, the height of the liquid in the container is 1. We're going to leave that till the end, probably. This looks like a rates of change question. Why would I say that? I suppose that's the point of this. They gave us the volume of a shape in a question where they've already hinted at calculus. So in my head, I'm on my, like, my warning is going off that there might be, my spidey sense going off that it might be a rates of change one where we have to do like two fractions equal or multiplied together equals a third guy. And like we'd want, let's say it's going to be I don't know what it is yet, but let's say hypothetically it's dv dt. We need one to have dv on top and one to have dt on the bottom. But I could be wrong. But I'm not now that I read it. At this time, the height of the liquid is decreasing at a rate of 0.03 meters per hour. Before even going any further, because that's meters for the height and hour, which is time, I can say that dh dt, so how much the height is changing over time, would be minus 0.03. Minus simply because it's decreasing. 0.03 is the number, minus because it's decreasing dh dt. Because that's what the height is changing over time. They say find the rate at which the volume of the liquid is decreasing at this time. So they don't say with respect to what. So like we know that they're asking what the rate of the volume is changing. So they want dHd something, or dVd something. Sorry, I just completely misspoke. They want dVd something, but we don't know what it is because they didn't really say anything. It's going to be, if they don't say it's going to be, oh, they even told you here down here, I suppose. They said give your answer in this, which makes sense because volume, the top guy is meters cubed, time on the bottom is hours. So I suppose that makes sense. So what they're asking us for is dV dt. We have no direct way of getting that. So what we're going to do is do what I said. We're going to make it two new fractions where I know I want dv on the bottom and dt on the, or dv on the top and dv on the bottom of one. And I need a third guy. And it's undoubtedly going to be h because they, you know, we've just been fucking with h the whole time. The h has always just been mentioned as like some guy in the corner waiting. So like the height, they told us the height. Oh yeah, well they gave us dh dt as well. Yeah, perfect. And also they gave us a formula that's v in terms of h. So all of that kind of leads me to think height is like he's just been hanging around waiting for his moment. Now instead of dh dt, I know I can put in the minus 0.03, but the problem is I don't know dVdh. I don't have anything that I can put in for that yet. So I have to figure that out. And the way we normally do it is if they tell us the shape that it is, we would go to our log tables, find the corresponding volume formula and differentiate it. But here we'd have to go up to this guy and differentiate this because that is their volume formula. So that's V in terms of H. If I differentiate that, this letter goes on top and then this letter here, or the one in the function, goes on the bottom, right? So that means that's dV to H, that's what I want. So I'd have to differentiate that to know what subs in here. Now normally these would be on the same two pages, but hang on, 5h squared plus 4. 5h squared plus 4 to the power of 3 over 2 minus 6. So you notice I didn't write VH like they had up here. I just wrote V. That's fine. That's okay. It makes no odds. Really, it's kind of the same thing. But I need to differentiate that. So I'm going to do dVdH. Now the 6, because it's a number on its own, just disappears. This guy, technically, I would argue, is a chain rule situation. Now, I've done other videos on the chain rule, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time. But I was just doing it the other day, so I'm kind of like in that zone. I would say the V is this, the U is V to the power of 3 over 2. Other people will want to do their PTA nonsense. By all means, do it that way if you want. But I would say this is the case because I multiplied in front by 3 over 2 and lowered it by 1. Yes, I had a feeling I just fucked that up because I was doing it too fast. Then I multiply these 10h by 3 over 2 v to the power of a half. We never leave v in our answer, and also if we multiply 10 by 3 over 2, we would get 15. So we get 15h, and then instead of v, we get 5h squared plus v to the power of a half. And the power of a half is also the square root, so I'm going to keep that in mind as well, just in case. I don't know if that's going to be useful, but we might as well remember it. But that's dVdH. D capital V. I understand now to do the chain rule I did a small v. That might confuse the issue, but that's capital dVdH, which is volume. Small v is within the chain rule. All of that's chain rule. This is the actual guy we're looking for. So I would say 15h square root of 5h squared plus 4. Is that right? 5h squared. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's chill. I think that's okay. Now, that looks like nonsense, and how the hell would you multiply all that together? And that's a crazy concept. But they told you at a certain time the height is 1 meter, and they're saying what is the rate at this time. So we're just going to put in 1 everywhere there's a h. Isn't that correct? I feel like there's something I'm missing here. Like, the one thing you want to watch out for is if it's sometimes instead of meters, they might give you one measurement as centimeters, and I might be missing that. The 0.03 seems strangely small compared to the rest. You want to watch out that it's a minus, of course. The number seems small, but in the deferred papers, they sometimes just do that because they're just kind of like, they're just trying to give you numbers. They don't really mind too much that it's crazy, but it's all right. We multiply by minus 0.03. And that would be 45. So that's going to be 45 anyway, and that's going to be minus 0.03. If we multiply that, we would get 1. That shouldn't take me as long as it's taken me. 1.35 minus meters cubed an hour, something like that. I might be multiplying that wrong. No, I think that's fine. I think that's okay. I have the right idea about it. Again, some of the numbers just feel like I'm missing something. Oh, okay, we're just on to the next thing. Okay. The speed in meters per second of a skydiver jumps from a plane is given by this, where t is the thing. Okay, I'm not going to do that. That would just be going into table mode. Some people, what they would do is they would sub in 0 everywhere there's a t and get that answer, which is fine. I just know that if you sub in 0 for t, you would get 0 as the final answer. Yep. God, I hope so now. But you could just keep subbing in 8 for t, sub in 12 for t, sub in 16. Otherwise, you would go to table mode. You would say your start is 0, your end is 32, and your step is 4. That's something to watch out for, though. The step is 4. That's something that they do a lot to kind of catch people out. And then they're hoping that you would plot all the things on the diagram. So, like, for example, you would do 0, 0 for the first one. For the second one, you go to 4 and go to 29.7, which would be like there, very close to 30. And then the 24 one that they gave us would be 53.6. You kind of want to just make sure you're not hitting the 50 or the 60. Get within reason to 53.6. They'll allow you to be slightly off. They know you're just eyeballing it and you're not a robot. But just don't do anything crazy like pick 50 or 60. Find the acceleration. So that's velocity, right? That's the speed, right? That's what v is in this context. I know there's many different ones. As they jump from the plane. So basically, I should have kind of copped that. If they were giving me a distance or a speed or acceleration, there's always a chance that they'll want us to do this thing. So if we go up this way, we're differentiating. And if we want to go backwards, we're integrating. Remember that. So because we're going from velocity to acceleration, we're going to differentiate this. And there's more space on the next page. That's nice. That's nice of them. So 54 1 minus this. Now differentiating this looks scary, but before we do it, we'll just multiply it out. So multiply 54 into the bracket and we get this, and that's a lot easier to differentiate. And the thing is, if we differentiate that, we would get dv dt, because that is a letter in it. 54 goes away because there's a letter on its own. E to the power of whatever. It looks like in your log tables where it says e to the power of x changes to a e to the power of ax. So we would change that to minus 54 multiplied by minus 0.2 e to the minus 0.2 t. Minus 54 was just shimmy to the outside until we could actually differentiate the e part. If we multiply that in, we'd get 54 over 5, e minus 0.2 t. Now, they said find the acceleration of the skydiver 1 second after they jump from the plane. So what I've found here is dv dt, which is the acceleration formula. Now, what they want me to do is just sub in 1 everywhere we see t. So again, I'm not going to type that in. You guys will be able to type it in, but all they want you to type in on your calculator is this. And that should tell you the acceleration. Round it to 1 decimal place. Use integration to find the average speed. Okay, hang on. Okay, sorry about that. What are we doing? Oh yeah. Find the acceleration after 1 second. Okay, so we differentiated, it said, yeah, use integration to find the average speed. So if it asks for the average speed, we have to integrate the speed formula. So we have to integrate this guy. Remember, if it asks for the average of a function, right? So if it asks for the average of a function, you would do the 1 over b minus a is how your teachers would describe it to you. 1 over b minus a. And then we'd integrate the actual function here with the dx, right? So that's when it says the average value of a function. So the average speed over the first 10 seconds, sorry, over the first 10 seconds means from 0 to 10. So those would be our limits. But we can't, the smaller number always has to be on the bottom. Now, technically I have to integrate this guy, but I'm going to integrate the bit that I multiplied out already. As I said, it's probably easier to just do it after you've multiplied it out. So I'm going to have 1 over 10 minus 0, this, 54 minus 54 e minus 0.2t, dt technically that would be, because we have t's involved. Yeah, so if we integrate that, by the way, that would be 1 over 10. This would turn into the 54, turn into 54x, well, t, sorry. Now, this guy follows the rule. If you've e to the ax, it becomes, when you integrate 1 over a, e to the x. Kind of similar to when you differentiate it, but just to do 1 over a at the start. So it's going to be minus 54 divided by minus 0.2 this time. But it's still e to the minus 0.2t. And then 10 and 0. A big issue is people assume that when you do so we're going to sub in the 10 and then sub in the 0. People often assume that if you sub in the 0 one, it all disappears. But that's not necessarily true, as we're going to see here. Sub in the 10, I should probably clean that up, make it easier on me. What I'm going to do here, yeah, do that. So that would turn into, divided by 0.2 is the same as multiplying by 5, so that would turn into 270, I think. Try that in your calculator though. I'm kind of taking liberties with a few things here. But then we would do the minus, and we would do it again for the thing if we sub in 0. Now 54 times 0, that will go away. But the plus 270e, the power then would be minus 0.2 multiplied by 0. But all of this thing here turns into a 1. If you put it in your calculator, you can check. So that's actually 270. So you want to watch out about that. Now give your correct answer to the nearest meter per second. So it's going to be 1 over 10 multiplied by 540 plus 270 e to the minus 2 minus 270, right? I'll let you just try that in your calculator and get the answer. Find the terminal velocity of the skydiver, that is to find the value of the limit of vt as t goes to infinity. So I don't like when they're doing this with you guys, because you guys don't really do limits all that much anymore, so I wouldn't really be worried about this. If you want to, a way that I've kind of seen with you guys what might be handy is basically sub in 0 everywhere you see t and get an answer, and then sub in 5 maybe and get an answer, and then sub in 10 and get an answer, and then sub in, I don't know, 50 maybe and get an answer, and just keep subbing in like bigger and bigger things until you can kind of determine a pattern in the answer. So like, let's say you did this and you got, when you do 0, I think that's all right. I just kind of moved on without thinking about that, actually. I think that's chill. If you sub in 0 to the original, you would get 0, as we saw. Oh, yeah, they did it up here, kind of. Okay, so you see these numbers here that you probably have done if you've done this question. Just look at those and kind of determine where they look like they're heading. So it goes from 0 to 29. That's a big jump. Now, I know this because of how it works, but these are going to slowly, these numbers will never go past 54. These numbers are slowly going to start from 0 and head towards 54. And if you just kept going from the 32 up, like I did with the subbing in 10 and subbing in 50, if you just kept subbing in a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger number for t, you will notice that they're all heading towards a certain number that will actually end up being 52 or 54 in this case, right? Now, the reason why I know that is because I know that e to the minus 0.2t is the same as 1 over e to the 0.2t. Now, the bigger the t is, the bigger the bottom part of the fraction would be. So as t gets bigger, the bottom part gets bigger. But as the bottom part gets bigger, the whole fraction ends up getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So if we had 1 over 2 and then 1 over 4, let's say, and then 1 over 9, right? The bigger the number is on the bottom, the smaller the overall fraction is. So if t keeps getting bigger, the e keeps getting bigger. If the bottom of the fraction keeps getting bigger, the whole fraction gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So as t gets really big, as it goes to infinity, the bottom of the fraction would get really big. It would go towards infinity as well. But then the whole fraction would, because it gets bigger and bigger and bigger on the bottom, it would get to like 0.0000000000001, to the point where we kind of say it's basically just going to be 0. So to take that all into account, as t goes to infinity, this guy basically disappears and it becomes 0. So in the original thing, we had the volume formula was equal to 54 multiplied by 1 minus e to the minus 0.2t. But as we said, if t keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, that becomes 0. So it effectively goes away, and we'll end up with just 54 times 1, which is 54. That's kind of what I would do for that one for you guys. There's other tricks and stuff. But the problem is, I just don't think you spend enough time doing limits and knowing what's going on to learn all the different tricks. So just sub in bigger, progressively bigger and bigger numbers until you can kind of go, wait a second, the answers never go past 54. Like if you took that V formula from the question and subbed in 1,000,000 instead of the T, the calculator probably just tell you 54, I think, right? Because it just runs out of decimals, it doesn't care. The airplane flies d kilometers out to a jump site, an average speed of x. This is going to fucking piss me off. I just know it. Ugh. At an average speed of x kilometers an hour. Okay, it then flies d meters back from the jump site. Throughout the return journey, its speed is 10% less than x. Find the percentage increase in the time it will take for the return journey. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the time for both. All right, so for trip 1, I'm going to say capital T1. I would say the time, which is small t, and I would say T1. Would be equal to, according to that silly triangle, distance, speed, time. If I want to find the time, I would do distance over speed, which for the first trip was d over x. So that's the time it would take me to do the first trip, d over x, whatever that is, that's the answer. Then it says for the trip back, t2, it's the same thing, but same distance, but the speed is different. It says it's 10% less than x, so that means it's 90%. If it's 10% less, that means it is 90%, and 90% of x, the way we would write that in maths is 0.9x, right? Because if you just change 90% to 0.9 and then multiply it, but multiplying you just put it back to back, so that would be 0.9x here, right? So that would be that. Now technically that's a 1 on the d, so what you can do is on your calculator do 1 over 0.9 without the d and the x. It should change that into 10 over 9, yeah, I think, and then we'll just put the d and the x back in, right? So we can change that here, so that would be 10d over 9x. What we can say is, it says what's the percentage increase? Well, it's going to take longer, obviously, because it's going slower. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to find what the increase is first. So I can't find the percentage increase until I find the actual increase. So I'm going to do the longer one minus the shorter trip. Now, if I want to change this, I want to put these together. The denominators have to match, so I'd make this 9, I make this 9. And then combining them, I'd get 10d minus 9d over a single fraction. That was 9x minus, well, whoops, don't need that at all. We only write the denominator once, I fucked that up, sorry. D over 9x then would be the increase. So it will take d over 9x hours extra, right? But they said percentage increase. So if they want percentage increase, they want the increase on top of a fraction, and they want the real amount, or the original amount, sorry, on the bottom. So the original amount was d over x. Well, I should say original there, sorry. And and then multiply by 100. But we found out that the increase is d over 9x. So that's going to be on the top. D over x is going to be on the bottom, multiplied by 100. But what ends up happening is the dx's cancel. Now this is going to annoy the shit out of people because the d and the x both cancel, but we're on the top, we're still left with 1 over 9, and on the bottom we're left with 1. But then dividing by 1 is irrelevant, so we can get rid of him. So we're left with 1 over 9 multiplied by 100, which would be 100 over 9. Now it says correct to 1 decimal place, but you can put that into your calculator. What is it, 11.1%? I guess that makes sense. I kind of seen that, I suppose, but that is a trippy one. Even with me showing you how I would do it, I don't know if people are going to be okay with that. I might have gotten it wrong. You always keep that in mind. I'm not checking these. I'm just running through them. The purpose is for you guys to see how I would approach it. Question. Now, this has kind of defeated the purpose, I feel like, because this question, a lot of it was very... I don't mean simple. It wasn't easy, but generic. There was no huge amount of twists. I suppose that one with the one that tripped me up yesterday when I was doing this, the speed of the car and the camera on the car, that one was weird. But other than that, I think a lot of them really just said what they wanted you to do. This one told you what I wanted to do. It was very intense. People wouldn't have enjoyed any of that. But like here, it even says use integration to find the average. So it tells you find the acceleration. It didn't tell us to do differentiation, but you should know that. This thing is kind of fairly simple. This one, I can't describe it to you. That just looks like a rates of change question where you have to do the 3 fractions, simply because they told us some random number for some reason, and they told us a number for t that we should, or for h that we could sub in at some point. That's pretty nice of them. So that's kind of an indicator in my mind. Again, as I said, they were dealing with the volume question that they already had asked us to do calculus for in it, so it's probably a good indicator. This one is just like put it equal to, and it should be fine if I remember. Yeah, find the maximum volume. Yeah, okay. So that's gonna be my, yeah, that's that then.